Okay, let's see, a little bit, another minute. And then I'm going to hit record. So anybody wants to go back and watch this again, they can. Will this be posted, Alicia? Will we post this so they can? Okay.
I went ahead and hit record just so I didn't forget. And
okay.
Yes, we will.
All right. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the AIA Fort Worth Excellent in Architecture, Design, and Studio Awards for 2020. First, I wanted to, a little housekeeping, just to ask everyone other than the jurors to go ahead and mute themselves. And if you haven't already, also wanted to point out that we are getting one learning unit for this presentation. If you registered, you get your credit. The other thing I want to do is go ahead and thank the committee for helping put this on. Brandon, especially for putting the slides together, and then of course Alicia and Mackenzie at the AIA chapter, Fort Worth chapter. Now I want to turn it over to Terry. Terry Thornton is a curator of education at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. She is typically our host for this event. Not this year, but hopefully we can get back there in the coming years. Terry, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Under normal circumstances, as Lonnie mentioned, we would all be at the Tadao Ando designed Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth in its beautifully crafted auditorium for this year's AIA Design Awards in conjunction with the museum's long-running Tuesday evenings at the Modern Speaker Series. This collaboration has been between the Modern and Fort Worth AIA has been an annual affair, a very good fit from which I think we have all benefited greatly. But because art and architecture don't stop, but rather operate as reassurances in challenging times, we have found a way to overcome our current restrictions with tonight's program, rich in content and recognition. I really appreciate the work of Lonnie Burns and all at Fort Worth AIA who have made tonight possible, and for their including me despite my coming to you from my home studio rather than hosting you all at the Modern. So with hopeful promises of an on-site event next year, I wish all involved the very best. And with that, I will let Lonnie get us started.
Thanks, Terry. I hear somebody talking in the background. Tell who that is.
Yeah. Well, all you can do is keep the pressure on them. I will try to think of some way I can pressure Otis, because Otis is really your.
All right, I got it. Okay, thank you, Terry. So next will be our, I'll introduce the jurors and then allow each one to present a project of theirs. We will have questions at the end for anyone who wishes to do that. If you'll type it in the comments or in the chat, or raise your hand, maybe we'll call on you. First juror I want to introduce is Mark Wellen, FAIA. Mark graduated from Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas in 1977. After graduation, he moved to Midland, Texas, working for Frank Welch Associates until beginning his private practice in 1983. He later went on to found Rottenberry Wellen Architects in 1988. In 2014, Mark was elevated to the AIA College of Fellows, and that same year was also selected as the Texas Tech University College of Architecture Distinguished Alumnus. In 2018, he received the Texas Tech University College of Architecture Tau Sigma Delta Silver Medal for distinction in design. Mark was the co-creator of and organizer of the annual Texas Architects Design Conference. I think 9-10 years going now. Mark was a founding member of the Texas Tech University School of Architecture Visiting Critics Studio, a graduate course that focuses on examining a design problem located in the desert southwest of Texas. He has served on the Texas Architects Design Awards Committee and is a longtime member of the Texas Society of Architects Publications Committee. Welcome, Mark. And thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks. It's really been a pleasure. And I appreciate you asking me to serve on the jury. The only thing I was a little surprised about in my packet, I didn't get my 25-year pin. I think over the last 25 years, this is the third time I've served as a juror for the Fort Worth chapter.
Yes, and thank you for doing that for us.
And I appreciate it a lot too, because I don't know how many people know, but I was born in Fort Worth. And it's been almost 60 years since I've lived there, but it was a piece of me still feels like I'm at home when I drive through. And I'll have to say that it seems like every time I've served as a juror over the last 20 or 30 years, however long it's been, there seems to be a rise in the quality of the work that we see. So, and this has been an enjoyable experience. I wish we could have done it face to face, but that's the life we live right now.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to show us today?
This is a recent project that's nearing completion as we speak. I guess for the people in Texas, they know my work is largely centered in West Texas. West Texas geographically is a large thing and descriptively is a large thing. Most people think of West Texas as flat, or they have the impression of Marfa and the Big Bend country with the mountains. There is a lot of open sky. I've fallen in love since I moved to Lubbock in '72 with the ability to always see the horizon. And that has become embedded in my psyche. So that's the pleasure of working out in the landscape of West Texas. This particular site doesn't show it so well in this aerial photo, but there's actually topography here, and which is unusual in a lot of parts of Texas, West Texas. And this site is about a third of the way between Midland and Fort Worth. And we actually had a Fort Worth contractor build it. There's a creek that runs through the site, and 30 or 40 years ago, it was dammed up, and there's a lake that is present in front of the building. And the house sits on a slight bluff with in the V shape that the house form takes is really driven by the immediate topography around the house. And the hill kind of comes to a point right there. Where the thick trees are down below is where the original ranch house was. This ranch has been in the same family for 4 generations. And the old ranch house got to a point where it was unsalvageable, so the owner decided to build a new place. If you go to the next slide, I think there's a floor plan. You can see, I don't know what all those black bars are on here. The wing to the north of the page is a guest wing, primarily guest rooms. And the other wing is the living and master area with a garage and a bunk room out to the back. They're joined by a porch that allows all the public spaces of the house, the porch and indoor spaces, to orient to the primary views. And The porch also acts as a great dog trot feature, even though not in the classic sense, where the breezes can blow through. And as you would expect in Texas, West Texas, sometimes the breezes get excessive. So we designed a barrier in there to be able to close off that porch to the breeze when it gets excessive. At the far left-hand side, you can see that it kind of buries into the hill a little bit. So the house really does become of the hill rather than on the hill. And it can serve as a singular residence when when the owners are there, and when they have family and guests, then it expands down the other wing. Okay, you can go to the next slide. As you can see, it sits right at the brow of this hill, and part of the extremes of our conditions out here aren't only the extreme temperatures. You know, the summers can be very, very hot, and the winters can be really cold and windy. But the sun is always something you have to guard against. Even this time of year, we can have a 90-degree day. And I've always said that it's harder to design for the fall than the winter or the summer, because the fall can have such extreme temperature days. So to me, the whole concept of this house became a big umbrella-like roof that hovers over it to provide shade to all the critical spaces. Okay. This is looking up the hill. There's still some scaffolding in place here from installing the glass. There are references made here to typical ranch topography with water troughs and poured-in-place concrete construction. But the canopy of the roof is the main element. Okay, go to the next one. This is from the entry approach side on the northwest side of the hill. That is the top of a retaining wall right there that you see in front of you. Okay. This is as you progress on around the building, and you're in the kind of the entry court side. Okay. This is obviously pre any landscaping. We try to do very minimal landscaping and just restore the natural grasses and very little additional trees, mostly native West Texas trees. And this is the guest wing going down the off to the northeast. All right. This is the end of the guest wing. Okay. Looking down the guest wing, each of those little box cars that are hanging off the side are bathrooms for the guest rooms. And in the distance is the living room. Okay. Looking back to the north on a better lit day, or northeast, you can see that outdoor living area, the porch that is the modified dog trot idea, and the depth of the canopy to protect this during the main movement of the sun across the public areas during the day. Okay. We really wanted to continue the footprint of the building at a datum line and not try to over design a stair element. And so we just thought that we would kind of float these steps and again make reference to the ranching way of life, where they just find a simple solution to a problem, but we try to give it a little bit of elegance. Okay. little more of a close-up of the living space from outside. And you can see that the ever-present horizon line is out there, but you do begin to see some of the expanse of their view. Okay. From the porch, looking out. Okay. This is the windscreen that we talked about. It's a big door that flushes into the wall when it's not in use. And then when it swings open, it lands against the column there on the right. And that's perforated steel, so a little bit of air can pass through, but it blocks most of the strong breezes. All right. Another shot of the canopy. The roof is a structural wood deck with all of the metal members are hot dip galvanized so that it won't have any maintenance over time. It should be age pretty naturally without any required routine maintenance over the years. Okay. This is a shot just inside the entry looking down toward the living room. Okay. This is a few steps on beyond the last shot. This room, obviously because of the forms that were driven that happened in this room, in the relatively low pitch of the roof, we use these bowstring trusses at the ridge and valley points and to keep the room very light structurally. And the fireplace mass anchors the corner, and then the view expands totally, almost 180 degrees around this room. Okay. Just a detail of the ceiling. That ceiling is particle board is all it is. And we didn't see any point in trying to overemphasize the materiality of it. It just became a neutral element. Okay, I don't know if that's the last slide. That may be the last slide. Anyway, that's a quick presentation of a recent project.
Thank you, Mark. Beautiful. All right. The next juror I want to introduce, Sarah Lopergolo. Did I pronounce that right?
Close.
FAIA. Sarah received a Bachelor of Architecture from Syracuse University and is a partner at Seldorf Architects in New York City, where she has been for over 20 years. Earlier this year, Sarah was elevated to the College of Fellows by the American Institute of Architects. She currently serves as treasurer of the Board of Open House New York and sits on the advisory board of Syracuse University School of Architecture. Sarah is also an active member of the AIA Women in Architecture Committee. Sarah was the partner in charge of the Sunset Park Material Recovery Facility in Brooklyn, New York, and is currently serving as partner in charge of the expansion and enhancement of the Museum of Contemporary Art, San Diego, and the Frick Collection in New York City. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to this. It was exciting to see the projects today. For those of you, maybe go to the next slide, that don't know much about our firm, Seldorf Architects is founded by Annabelle Seldorf in 1989. And I've been a partner with Annabelle since 2004. Next, we have a lovely office space on Union Square. This is one of those wonderful days of the market in the square. And our office now, next slide, is, here's a nice space of it. We're about 65 people. and really just a wonderful group and collaborative group of very talented colleagues. Next slide. We have, I think one of the nicest things about the firm is that we have a very, very wide variety of work. The firm started, as a lot of firms in New York City start out, by doing small renovations, apartment renovations. And so as the firm grew, it grew into art gallery spaces and larger residential projects, condominiums, and museum and gallery space, larger gallery spaces. So it's been quite a long journey and a great variety of projects. Next slide. But the project I wanted to talk to you about today was a project that just was completed about a year ago. It's a pro bono project that we did in the office. This is the Mob Window School in Zambia. Next slide. And it's located about 2 hours from the capital, Lusaka. Next. And this project is a primary school for about 250 kids. And when 14 Plus Foundation came to us with this proposal, this was their second school. They had done the Chapata School close by. When they came to us with this project and we sort of brought it forth to the office and asked who would want to work on it, of course, everyone raised their hands and were very excited. And we're like, okay, how do we decide who works on it? So a little bit different than we normally did. We did a competition in the office. And so this is a page of variety of different teams that got together and individuals that put forth proposals. And then next slide. And then slowly we sort of coalesced around an idea. And what was really inspirational for us was sort of this amazing landscape that we see, but also this wonderful baobab tree that exists in the savannah here. And the fact that this tree acts as a gathering space. So naturally we thought, well, okay, well, maybe that is what our concept can be, is this beautiful shade tent. For which the classrooms are below. Next. And so our site planning strategy was really to bring the school as close to the main road as possible. And as is typical around these kinds of communities, is that the school not only serves the children, but it also serves the community. So there's a sort of a larger master plan around the idea that there would be a clinic here, an outdoor cooking facility for townspeople to come and cook, a soccer field, community garden that the residents, the community actually uses to sell vegetables. And then up on the top of the page is where there would be teacher housing, because it's important for the teachers to be close by the students. Next slide. And so the concept of this sort of large tent, if you will, was really taking advantage of the environment that exists here. Very, very hot sun, 3 months of the year with monsoon rains. So it was really this sort of way of collecting the classrooms below. There are 8 classrooms, and really the ideas were to create courtyards and streetscape all kind of underneath this tent structure. And the real heart of the plan was on the corner toward the road, which was this large assembly space in the highest part of this canopy. Next. So this is a facility that has to be 100, completely off the grid, and 100% renewable energy needed to be found here. So we introduced solar panels, we collected rainwater for reuse, and have a windmill for the well to pump water for potable water. Next. And so here is a sort of, as you can see, this is our main corner space where everything comes together. So big, meetings for the children, as well as the community. A lot of the mothers in the community come and cook for the students. And so they will serve meals here in this open court. And so what we really wanted was this canopy to kind of float above the lower brick buildings and really allow for air and ventilation and light to kind of penetrate in different ways. Next. And so the idea for the classroom buildings was really to also try to find industry in the community. And so the idea we had was to use the beautiful sort of local earth and create the brick, compression brick that was used as a module to, to form these classrooms. And what was great about that is these machines remain here and the community can therefore use the machines again for further building. And so this is the men, making the bricks from the earth that's there. And next, and then sort of installing everything. It was really, everyone took great pride in doing this. It's a lot of bricks. I can't remember the total number, but you can imagine. Next. And so what we did underneath the canopy was also, introduce clerestory windows into the classrooms to get as much light and air in. And next slide. Also created brick lattice work in some of the brick areas to also increase the ventilation. And next. And here's sort of one of our streets, and really you can see we strategically cut little skylights in where we could get some dappled light in, and there's some courtyard spaces below this where children outside of a library or an art room can also work outdoors. Next. And then this is an example of the teachers housing. 2 have been built so far, but there's 6 more to come. And so that's to the north of the site. And we are in planning now to also introduce a couple of dormitories as this school goes to 7th grade, but they're beginning to introduce 8th grade and 9th grade, at which point the children will be in the dormitories, those older students. And next. And yeah, so this is really just a great shot before the corrugated metal goes on, really just to show the expanse of the landscape and the expanse of this structure housing all of these buildings below. But the school's up and running, and really everyone's very happy there. So.
Thank you. All right, our third juror I want to introduce is John Ronan, FAIA. John is a founding principal of John Ronan Architects in Chicago, founded in 1999. John holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Michigan and a Master's of Architecture degree with distinction from Harvard University Graduate School of Design, where he received the Julia Armory Appleton Prize upon graduation. In December 2000, he was named as a member of Architectural Record magazine's inaugural Design Vanguard issue. And in January 2005, he was selected to the Architectural League of New York's Emerging Voices program. In 2017, John was recipient of the American Academy of Arts and Letters Architecture Award. And also in that year, his Poetry Foundation building was listed as one of the 125 best buildings of the last 125 years by Architectural Record. John is currently the John and Jean Rowe Endowed Chair Professor of Architecture at the Illinois Institute of Technology College of Architecture, and he has been the Eugene McDermott Centennial Visiting Professor at the University of Texas at Austin, and the John G. Williams Visiting Professor in Architecture at the University of Arkansas, and is the recipient of the Distinguished Professor Award from the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture. Welcome, John.
Hi, Fort Worth. How are you all? I wish I was there. I've been to Fort Worth several times, and I wish I was there right now because it's cold as hell here.
Maybe next year we can bring you in.
Yeah. I've been to the Ondo Museum, and so I'm just going to pretend I'm there right now. I'm going to show you one project also. This is one that we finished last year. It's called the Ed Kaplan Family Institute for Innovation and Tech Entrepreneurship at IIT, which is a mouthful. Most people call it the Innovation Center. It's basically, it's something of an idea factory, a place of creative collision where students from different departments can work on project-based courses together. Next slide. This is the map of campus on the right. Our building is in that kind of red area. And then lower right is Mises' campus plan from 1940. Next slide. You can see Mises designed the campus on a 24-foot grid, which you see in that middle drawing on the left. And then you can see how it's infiltrated the DNA of the campus in that kind of structural plan of the buildings on the lower left. And I believe that's the only photograph of Mises smiling in existence. Next slide. So these are Mises' office drawings. And the original campus was mostly classrooms and labs and drafting rooms. And so they laid out this 24-foot grid. Next slide. The first thing we did was ask the professors who were going to teach. It's 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock, everyone.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. The first thing we do is ask all the professors to sketch out their preferred teaching arrangement to see if this 24-foot module could accommodate it. Next slide. And so we tested these out. Next slide. And so we adopted this 24-foot grid. The building is organized around these 2 open air courtyards that bring light and air into the center of the building and through which visitors enter. Next slide. This is a ground floor plan on the lower left. So you enter via one of 2 courtyards, either from the east or from the west. They're connected on the 2nd floor. The courtyards also act as stormwater detention tanks. So they're rainwater cisterns. So you can see that gutter that runs around, and maybe the rain chains are visible there that bring it down into the gravel. Next slide. That's the metal planking that forms the surface of the garden, which is perforated for water infiltration. Next slide. This is the ground floor. So it's a variety of labs and studios and spaces, kind of thinking and making. So there's a shop, and then there's open areas, and then there's breakout areas. Next slide. There's also a big kind of tribune stair for TED Talks and events and hanging out between class. Next slide. This is the 2nd floor, which is home to the Institute of Design, which is a post-grad program. And the idea is really to let the architecture enable students to move fluidly between different modes of thinking and making. Next slide. All those walls, by the way, are partitioned, so they can be reconfigured over time. On the 2nd level, the courtyards are connected via this open air passage that you see on the upper right. So one can actually walk through the building without ever going inside. You can go up the stair through that passage and down the other side. Next slide. The building has a radiant deck heating and cooling system. And so there's hydronic tubing in the concrete, and that converts the metal deck to a radiant surface that heats and cools the building. So the structure is actually used to heat and cool the building. So in that image with the orange reception area, the deck you're seeing up there is actually a heating and cooling element. Next slide. And then the 2nd floor is wrapped in this ETFE foil, which is actually 4 layers, and it modulates the amount of incoming solar energy, which I'll explain in a minute. Next slide. This is the chemical equation of ETFE, drawn out by the president of the university at the time, who was a chemical engineer. Next slide. ETFE is like a clear Teflon. It's not a plastic, so it doesn't yellow. So there's 4 layers of this ETFE, and then pneumatically, through sophisticated pneumatics, we can move these layers together and apart. And so when they're apart, it lets more sun in. Next slide. And then when the layers, next slide. And then when the layers are moved together, the dots overlap and allows less solar energy to come in the building. And then this talks to the radiant deck through a BAS system. So it's kind of like an organism. The skin is sort of talking to the elements that heat and cool the building and tell it how much heating or cooling to deliver. Next slide. This is just a plan of the area. You can see the different chambers that make up those pillows. Next slide. There's 4 compressors on the roof, so each facade is independent. Next slide. I won't bore you with these valves. Next slide. And so this is what it looks like on the inside. So that's the air. So there's air constantly running through the facade at a very low velocity, and constantly being exchanged. So there's air intake on one end of the pillows, and it's being kind of let out at the other end. Next slide. The corner is very important in Mises architecture. So we wanted to stress the corner. So here we have a solid acrylic rod that's supported by steel that makes up the corner. The ETFE is stretched around it. This is the first instance of this detail world. So we could get a clear corner and not a heavy shadow. Next slide. So the ETFE runs around the perimeter, and then there's clear glass at the courtyards to the interior on the 2nd floor. Next slide. These are just some views of the outside of the building. Next slide. At nighttime, the facade starts to glow. Next slide. That's looking into the shop, the maker space on the ground floor. Next slide. Next slide. And then it's more lantern-like, takes on this lantern-like quality at night. That might be the last slide. Next one. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, on the inside at nighttime, the ETFE takes on this kind of reflective metallic look. Next slide. I think that's the last one. That's the last one.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. So the next part of our on the agenda, next thing on the agenda is the actual awards that everyone is here for. I just asked the jury members to leave their mics on and hopefully provide a little commentary as we announce these winners. First up is the Studio Awards. And the first Studio Award goes to Lotus Marsh Amphitheater, Norman D. Ward architect. All right. The next Studio Award is COMOfresh, Ibanez Shaw Architecture. Any comments from the jury?
Well, I was taken in both of these cases by the simplicity of both ideas, and they were obviously not expensive projects that can be built on a very thin budget, but they produce a lot of architecture with that. I think they both serve the community well, And I really look forward to seeing these executed.
Yeah, I would second the fact that the sort of simple gestures in both of these were very nice. If we want to talk specifically about each one, maybe that's what the winners would like to hear. So I think that, you know, with this one in particular, just sort of attaching to the ground in the simplest way, and really just sort of a straightforward move that creates a sort of a big gesture. I think personally, I don't think this this project needed these translucent panels, and maybe it detracts a little bit from it, but overall the idea of this simple canopy in this kind of landscape and for this kind of program was something we were drawn to of all the entrants in the studio section.
Yeah, it's very restrained. It shows an economy of means, and it just does the necessary things very well. And I agree with what Sarah was saying. I exclude the translucent panels from the necessary things comment, but nevertheless, a very nice project and very thoughtful, and the materials are well selected.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all agree that maybe the panels are a little excessive, but I can understand the rationale behind it. I also like the way that this structure relates to the Lakeside Pavilion also, even though they're different elements. And I'm impressed by the scale of it. You have these more intimate lower end, and then at the other side of the canopy, it reaches up and can be more embracive of a larger group. So it meets the ground well, and it's very expressive structurally.
Should we look at the next? So I think you'll probably notice later on in the design awards that there was a sort of an emphasis on this louver system that seems to be prevalent in this area. I think that personally, this project is very simple. It's sort of trying to use this louver strategy as a way of kind of augmenting the typical box, right? I think where it becomes successful is when that tool can modulate and become something else. And here it sort of takes on a spatial component as well. And modulating, obviously the light, the way the light filters can be very successful with this strategy.
I think that the branding, integrating the branding into the building is done very deftly, and the overall simplicity of the structure is very appealing. And this porch space being configured in a number of ways really is the strength of the whole project. I think the outdoor space is the strength of it. And then using gardening as part of the landscape is a really nice element of it too.
Yeah, of all the ones that had kind of a slatted or louvered facade, this one was perhaps the most convincing, even though unbuilt. The way it sort of created arcade and signage and windscreen at the same time, it seemed more convincing than some of the other ones.
All right. Moving on to the design awards. First up will be the merit awards. First is 1165 8th Avenue, Ibanez Shaw Architecture. And Jerry, feel free to comment as we go through these slides.
Well, I think we were just talking about this sort of louver strategy we have seen. Again, I think that where that louver can be not just a facade expression, but actually double function for other uses is where it can become more successful. So obviously this looks like there's some sun strategy here as well. I think that probably as generally we felt that maybe some components of the building didn't sort of resolve very well around the entire building. But it warranted a merit.
I thought it's an interesting project. I'm sure that was quite enjoyable for the architects. But to me, the challenge they faced with the expansion of the hotel element in mid-project design was handled adroitly. And I do appreciate the fact that every facade does tell a little bit different story. And if I had more information about the immediate site, I would probably understand that better. But I thought it was a pretty elegant resolution to the problem myself.
I think we all like that project. My questions about it would be, it seems to be organized in kind of layers with a sort of lobby and then an event space and then hotel rooms up above. But the facade was kind of telling a different story. Each facade was very different. And so while it was very interesting, I think there's also maybe a little bit too many things going on for us that like Sarah said, were not resolved, that kept us from giving it an honor award. But we all like this project immediately.
Yes.
Okay, next award, Merit Award, goes to Thornton Steel, Bennett, Benner and Partners.
John, you start.
Yeah, I mean, again, all of us like this one. I think the jury was a little bit split on this one. I felt that the steel was too covered up in many places and could have played a more headline role in the project, but often found itself competing with other materials, masonry and drywall, and then the kind of like that last slide, some became decorative at points rather than just kind of a straightforward, but a very elegant and straightforward structure. And so I was a little bit ambivalent about this, but I think everybody liked it. I, maybe would like to have seen more steel, but was probably alone in that opinion.
I reread the description, and there was some notation that it was the owner's choice to add stone to the facade. So I wonder what the architects would have done if that wasn't the case.
The owner's probably sick of looking at steel all day.
Yeah, exactly.
You should have done it all out of masonry then.
I mean, I agree with you, John, that, you know, there could have been more pushing of this use of the steel, and I find the aluminum contrasting with the steel in a way more problematic than the stone. Maybe that stone could have been really treated more like a panel and really framed in a steel channel or something like that, that would have really sort of indicated it as this additive piece. And then bothered a little bit about some of the decorative elements of the steel inside. But overall, I think I appreciate the simplicity of the structure and its outcome.
And I agree with some of those comments. I think everybody was a little troubled by the use of the stone, or at least the way it was expressed. Some of the elements of the form didn't appeal to me as much as the overall concept of the structural application. But I can't remember whether it was John or Sarah, but one of them said that kudos to the owner regardless, because how many steel companies have you seen that have a mundane box for their offices that don't at all express what they're about? And I think that's one reason that drove us to want to give this an award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next project. Merit Award, Allen Steam Center, BLK Architects.
I think what we liked most about this project was the site, the way the building, the dialogue between the building and the site, and how it integrated into the site and made use of existing features on the site. We felt that was the strength of this project.
Yeah, I think that we looked at this obviously in comparison to similar typology, and this really was the most successful in terms of its siting. There are elements that perhaps are overwrought or overdone here, and maybe not necessary, but I think generally, as John said, just the overall siting and sensitivity to that siting was really what pushed it forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think the conceptual plan makes sense, and I think it also integrates into the site well. I think it could have been a considerably more successful project with just a little more editing of materials and finishes.
All right, next project, Merit Award, Fort Worth Stockyards Horse and Mule Barns, Bennett Benner Partners. Maybe Mark should go first on this one.
It's one of my earliest memories of the stockyards when they were still stockyards. I really appreciate the effort here to do a restoration project. I know that it's a very difficult category for jurors to award projects for, but I thought the restoration work here was done very sensitively, and I appreciate that it was done. And I know that this is an important part of the culture of Fort Worth, and I think it's great that this project happened, and they did a great job on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it was really just, I found the restrained restoration was successful, and agree that, you know, better to have restored this than to have knocked it down. And so I think it's successful in in that way.
And these kind of projects have a tendency to become over-designed and very
Cute.
kitschy or cute, yeah, or a little too sentimental. And we thought this one struck the right balance between recovering it without losing that character that drew you to it in the first place.
All right. Our final merit award tonight, 133 Nursery Lane Mixed Use, Beck Architecture.
So
John, you want to start with, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that we all like this project for its simplicity, its scale within the neighborhood. I think it's probably not 100% resolved as it goes around the building, but there are some elements and proportions that were very nice. And I think its attention to the street sidewalk level also was positive.
I agree. It makes a great transition to the single family neighborhood to whatever direction that is, left in the photo, and the larger apartments over there. And I think it's a pleasantly scaled, shell office building. And again, like Sarah said, I think there was a few elements that could have used a little stronger look and more resolution, but all in all, it came off well.
Yeah, it's a building type that does not have a history of yielding great success, but I think the reduced palette, the restraint in the moves and the way the materials combined, make for a successful project. The way it respects the street.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of those light poles, though.
Yeah, that they don't fit there.
Okay. The last award today is the Honor Award, and that goes to Chroma, Ibanez Shaw Architecture. Maybe John can start with this one.
Yeah, I mean, a very elegant building. Just a few well-placed moves. Very thoughtful. You can see it's a lot of precast here, so probably not an expensive building or big budget, but very but impressive what they were able to do with that budget. I mean, it's got kind of a nice the scale. You saw the arcade there approach to the entrance. I like the way it kind of mediated the scale of the street that you see there, and also the scale of a person kind of entering the building. Thought that was well done.
Yeah, I agree. Just for this kind of building typology, this really sort of pushes the envelope and just very elegant and integrated, and creates a nice gesture on the street as well.
I thought it was a very clear explanation of the program, and I really appreciated the way that it engaged the site and the topography, and made the most of a probably fairly restrictive budget. But to me, the strongest element is the use of light and the manipulation of light in the project, and for what better use than a place involved in optics. So I thought it was very well done.
I think that just to do a little shout out to their display strategies, I think are very nice too, and very well integrated, which it's It's very hard to make eyeglasses look interesting. Oh.
All right. Well, that's our program for tonight. Thanks again to the jury for joining us today. Thank you to everyone who joined in. And that's it for tonight.
Congratulations to the winners.
Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations to all the
Yeah.
winners.
Congratulations to everybody. We really enjoyed this.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's fun to look at the work.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
You.